Majority of women, at around 62%, have grape fantasies, with the frequency of these fantasies being 4 times a year, or once a week for approximately 14% of the respondents involved in these studies. Some sources point out that the prevalence of grape fantasies could be underestimated because the underlying research does not examine forced anal sex, forced oral sex, and grape by a woman. For a sizable amount of women, nearly half of their sexual fantasies involve the theme of grape. These studies point out that 9% of grape fantasies are extremely aversive, 45% are erotic, and 46% are both aversive and erotic. From these stats, it is clear that aversive grape fantasies are extremely rare, and they are characterized by genuine non-consent and minimal to no arousal at all. Other sources suggest that 50% of grape fantasies are fearful, 29% are completely sexual, and 21% of the fantasies are both sexual and fearful. Grape fantasies involve the use of physical force, the threat of force, or incapacitation to coerce a woman into sexual activity against her will. In sexual fantasies, the woman imagines being approached by an attractive man, but verbally rejects the sexual encounter, with the rejection being accompanied by aggressive seductions that result in arousal. The aggressive seductions involve the woman being tied up, unconscious, asleep, or intoxicated. For the record, a significant amount of grape and SA involves the women being intoxicated. Women who categorize their fantasies as erotic often report only a token of resistance, that is, not a real attempt to end the fantasy, a highly attractive male using minimal force, and high levels of sexual desire. The man in this case is often overtaken by her beauty, as well as uncontrollable longing to enhance her pleasure. Some erotic fantasies contain a powerful, ruthless, and uncaring brute, and somehow, these fantasies are exciting to women. In 3/4 of erotic grape fantasies, consent changed from initial unwillingness to full involvement in the activity. In half the erotic fantasies, the male is a current or ex-partner, with the male being an acquaintance in 1/5 of the cases. In half the fantasies, the perpetrator is driven by physical desire or romantic attraction. In these fantasies, the perpetrator is the winner, but the fantasizer is not the loser. In fearful fantasies, the man is older, less attractive, and a stranger, with the woman perceiving herself as a victim. The fearful fantasies contain coercion and painful violence, with little to no arousal. Women with fearful fantasies are more frightened, guilty, disgusted, embarrassed, and less thrilled about having the fantasies. The aggressive approach to overcoming non-consent in fearful fantasies often causes bodily damage, with again, the perpetrator being a stranger or faceless. Some fantasies are both erotic and fearful, characterized by a mix of arousal, excitement, fear, and a wide range of changes in the context of consent. Noteworthy, in 1/3 of the cases, consent changes from unwilling to willing, in another 1/3, resistance remains constant throughout the experience, and in less than 1/4, consent went from willing to unwilling. In 1/4 of erotic fearful fantasies, the attack leads to bodily harm. In another 1/4, the perpetrator used abusive language, and majority contains minimal resistance, be it physical or verbal. The perpetrator in erotic fearful fantasies is moderately attractive, with the dominant motive being romantic attraction, and less likely to involve the need to degrade the victim. Clearly, there are differences between the sexual and fearful fantasies, with overlaps being the man's status, that is, friend or stranger, the man's age, the man's level of attractiveness, and perceived female innocence. 3 popular explanations are fronted for why women have grape fantasies. First, the fantasies allow women with high sex drives and guilt to avoid the blame and shame that would come with consensual fantasies or actual sexual encounters. Second, grape fantasies offer a pathway to an open and guilt-free approach to exploring one's sexuality. The third, and less popular, explanation of grape fantasies involves attempts to make sense of potential physical situations, often serving as a rehearsal for actual grape situations. This third explanation is less popular because it is associated with equally less popular aversive or fearful grape fantasies as pointed out earlier.